Princess Valith Sonkai had spent 3 years studying humans before she agreed to marry one her people. The Etherians were ancient and powerful, their bodies made of living crystal that hummed with energy, their minds capable of touching thoughts across vast distances. Their lifespans measured in millennia rather than decades. Humans were none of these things. They were soft and fragile, their bodies made of water and meat and bone that broke so easily, their lives burning bright and fast like candle flames in cosmic wind. Their only notable trait being a strange stubbornness that other species found more amusing than threatening. When the Galactic Council proposed a marriage alliance between the Etherian Dominion and the Human Confederation, Valith had accepted it as her duty, nothing more. Nothing less. Her betrothed arrived on a gray diplomatic vessel that looked plain and utilitarian. Next to the gleaming crystal ships of her people, Marcus Chun stepped onto the landing platform wearing simple clothes, carrying a small bag of personal belongings, and offering a smile that seemed too gentle for a representative of any spacefaring species. He was average height for a human, with dark hair going gray at the temples and quiet brown eyes that seemed to notice everything while demanding nothing in return. Valith towered over him, her crystalline form catching the light of 3 suns and scattering rainbows across the landing platform. "Welcome to Etheria Prime," she said, a voice carrying the harmonic resonance of her kind. "Thank you for having me," Marcus replied, and his voice was soft, almost hesitant, like he was afraid of taking up too much space in the universe. The courtiers who had gathered to witness the deal arrival exchanged glances that Valith pretended not to see. She heard the whispers in the days that followed. "The princess has been given a pet human," Lord Von Kell said at a state dinner, not bothering to lower his voice. "Perhaps she can teach it tricks," Lady Sithara added, her crystalline laugh sharp as breaking glass. Marcus sat beside Valith at these events, eating quietly, speaking only when spoken to, never rising to the bait that the courtiers dangled before him like scraps before a stray animal. Valith found herself growing frustrated with him. "Do you have no pride?" she asked him one evening as they walked through the palace gardens, the twin moons casting silver light on flowers that sang in frequencies only Etherians could hear. "I have plenty of pride," Marcus said calmly, stopping to examine a bloom that pulsed with bioluminescent light. "Then why do you let them mock you?" He was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his words were careful, measured. "Where I come from, there is an old saying, 'The nail that sticks up gets hammered down.' I do not understand. It means that sometimes the wisest thing you can do is not attract attention." He smiled that gentle smile again. "I am a guest in your world, princess, surrounded by beings who could crush me with a thought. Living in a palace full of politics, I do not fully understand. Bound to a woman who finds me disappointing." He shrugged, a very human gesture. Under such circumstances, pride seems less important than survival. Valith did not know what to say to that. The months passed, and Marcus became a fixture in the palace, unremarkable as furniture, noticed only when someone needed something to criticize. He spent his mornings reading in the library, his afternoons walking in the gardens, his evenings tending to a small plot of earth he had requested permission to cultivate. "What are you growing?" Valith asked him once, watching him work the alien soil with his bare hands. "Tomatoes," he said, "and basil, and a few other things from Earth." "Why?" "Because growing things brings me peace." He looked up at her, dirt on his fingers, sweat on his brow. "Because I spent a long time in places where nothing grew. And now I want to be somewhere that things can live." She did not ask what he meant by that. She was not sure. She wanted to know the wedding ceremony was a grand affair, attended by representatives from 100 worlds, broadcast across the galaxy as a symbol of unity between old power and new. Valith wore traditional Etherian crystal armor that had been in her family for 10,000 years. Marcus wore a simple black suit that the tailors had. Needed to explain to him 3 times. They exchanged vows in both languages, hers ringing like bells, his quiet and steady, and when it was done, they were bound together in the eyes of every law that mattered that night, alone in their chambers for the first time as husband and wife. Marcus stood at the window looking out at the alien stars. "I know this is not what you wanted," he said without turning around. "It is my duty." Valeth replied, "Duty does not require wanting." "No." He turned to face her then, and something in his eyes looked old. Far older than his human years should allow, but it helps. He slept on a small bed in the corner of the room, giving her the massive crystalline platform that Etherians use for rest. He never complained. He never asked for more. He simply existed, quiet and unobtrusive. Like a shadow that had learned to make itself small, Valeth told herself she did not care. She had her duties, her responsibilities. The weight of an empire resting on her crystalline shoulders. What did it matter if her husband was a disappointment? What did it matter if the Alliance had given her a partner who inspired nothing but pity? She threw herself into her work, attending council meetings, managing territorial disputes, navigating the endless web of Etherian politics that had been her life since birth. Marcus attended some of these meetings, as was his right as royal consort. He sat in the corner, silent, watching, occasionally taking notes in a small book he carried everywhere. "Your human seems very interested in our military deployments," General Kethner observed after one such meeting. "He's probably bored," Valeth said dismissively. "Humans have such limited attention spans." "Perhaps." The general's crystal eyes lingered on Marcus for a moment. "But I knows he pays closest attention when we discuss the border conflicts with House Voronkel." Valeth waved away the concern. Marcus was harmless. Everyone knew that. Everyone could see that a year into their marriage, she had learned to think of him as pleasant background noise, a gentle presence that required nothing from her and offered nothing in return except quiet companionship and the occasional cup of strange bitter tea he brewed from his earth plants. Had no idea that everything she believed was wrong. She had no idea that the quiet gardener who slept in the corner of her room and smiled when courtiers insulted him had been watching, listening, and waiting. She had no idea what her husband truly was, not until the night House Voronkel came to kill her. The Festival of Twin Moons was the most sacred night in the Etherian calendar. For 1,000 years, the Royal Guard had laid down their weapons during the festival. The palace shields had been lowered, and the ruling family had walked among their people unprotected as a symbol of trust and unity. It was tradition. It was beautiful. It was the perfect night for an assassination. Valeth was in her private chambers with 6 of her handmaidens when the first explosion shook the crystal spire. The lights flickered and died. Emergency crystals pulsed red in the darkness. "What is happening?" one of the handmaidens cried, her young voice sharp with fear. Valeth moved to the window and saw fire blooming across the palace grounds. Dark figures moving through the gardens where Marcus grew his earth plants. The flash of weapons that should not exist on this sacred night. "Coup," she breathed, and the word tasted like ash in her mouth. The door to her chambers began to glow as someone on the other side pressed a plasma cutter against the ancient crystal. "My lady, we must hide," another handmaiden urged. "There is nowhere to hide." Valeth looked around the room desperately, searching for anything that could serve as a weapon. Finding nothing. "They will have planned for every escape route. Then we fight." "With what?" Valeth held up her empty hands. "Our ceremonial robes? Our good intentions?" The plasma cutter was making progress, the door beginning to crack and splinter, the heat from the cutting beam making the air shimmer. "Where is your human?" The youngest handmaiden asked suddenly. Valeth realized she did not know. She had not seen Marcus since the festival ceremonies began hours ago. He had probably fled at the first sign of trouble. She thought bitterly. He was soft and weak and harmless. And he had probably found some hole to hide in while assassins came to murder his wife. She could not blame him. She could only regret that she would die here. In this room, surrounded by frightened handmaidens, killed by enemies she had known were dangerous but had never taken seriously enough. The door-shattered armored figures poured through the opening, their crystal bodies marked with the colors of House Vornkel. Weapons raised and ready. Princess Volith Sornkai, the lead soldier announced, his voice cold with triumph. You are sentenced to death for crimes against the true rulers of Etheria. I have committed no crimes. Your existence is crime enough. He raised his weapon. Any last words? Valith opened her mouth to speak, to deliver some final defiance that would echo through history. She never got the chance. Something moved in the corridor behind the soldiers. Something fast, something terrible. The last soldier in the formation simply dropped, his body folding like paper, and before his companions could react, the next one fell, and the next. And the next Valith could not see clearly what was happening. She saw only shadows and movement and the spray of crystalline blood catching the red emergency light. She heard screams. She heard bones breaking. She heard the wet sounds of violence that she had only ever read about in history texts. And then there was silence. A figure stepped through the ruined doorway, walking over the bodies of the soldiers like they were nothing more than debris to be avoided. It was Marcus, but it was not the Marcus she knew. This Marcus was covered in blood that was not his own. His simple festival clothes torn and stained. His gentle brown eyes cold and focused in a way she had never seen before. In his hands, he carried weapons she did not recognize. Brutal and efficient things that looked like they had been designed by someone who understood exactly how to end life in the quickest way possible. Are you hurt? He asked, and his voice was calm, so terribly calm. How? Valith started. But her voice failed her. We need to move. Marcus pressed something into her hand. A communicator device that was already active. I have cleared a path to the Eastern Sanctuary. But we only have a few minutes before their reinforcements arrive. You cleared a path. She looked past them at the corridor, at the bodies stacked like firewood, at the walls painted with evidence of what he had done. Marcus. There were at least 30 soldiers between here and the Eastern Wing. 34. He was already moving toward the secondary exit, checking corners like someone who had spent a lifetime checking corners. Now it is 0. The handmaiden stared at him with naked terror. Valith understood their fear. She felt it too. This was not the quiet gardener who grew tomatoes and made tea. This was something else entirely. Come, Marcus said, and it was not a request. They followed him through the palace, through corridors that should have been filled with enemies, but were instead filled with the aftermath of enemies. Valith counted the bodies as they moved. She stopped counting at 50. At one junction, a squad of Vornkel soldiers appeared ahead of them, and Valith prepared to die. Marcus did not even slow down. He moved through them like water through cracks in stone, flowing and unstoppable, his weapons finding weak points in their crystal armor that Valith had not known existed. One of them managed to fire at him. He simply was not there when the shot arrived, having shifted sideways at the exact moment necessary. And then he was behind the shooter, and then the shooter was dead. How? Valith whispered as they stepped over the bodies. Marcus did not answer. He led them to the Eastern Sanctuary, where loyal members of the Royal Guard had barricaded themselves with the few weapons they had managed to find. The human? One of them gasped when they saw Marcus. He came through earlier, alone. Told us to prepare for the princess. You believed him? He had just killed 20 of the enemy in front of us. The guard's crystal eyes were wide. We believed him. Marcus was already at the window. Scanning the grounds below, the main enemy force is in the throne room, he said. They are expecting to announce the princess's death at dawn. Present Lord Vornkel as the new ruler. How do you know this? Because I have been listening to their communications for the past 8 months. He turned to face them, and in the red light, his blood-covered face looked like something from a nightmare. I have known about this coup since before they finalized their plans, and I have been waiting for them to commit to their attack. You knew. Valith felt something cold spreading through her crystalline chest. You knew they were going to try to kill me, and you said nothing. I could not act until they acted. His voice was patient, like he was explaining something simple to a child. If I had exposed them too early, they would have retreated, regrouped, tried again when I was not watching. But now they are committed. Now they are exposed. Now I can end this. You are one human. Yes. That strange smile appeared on his face. The same gentle smile he wore when tending his garden, but now it looked different. Now it looked dangerous. I am. He vanished into the darkness before anyone could stop him by dawn. The coup was over. Lord Vornkel was dead. His entire inner circle was dead. His soldiers were dead or surrendered or fled, and Marcus Chung, the quiet human gardener who everyone had dismissed as harmless, walked back into the sanctuary, covered in the blood of an army, sat down on a broken piece of furniture, and asked if anyone had seen his watering can. 3 days after the failed coup, Valith found her husband in the garden. The plants he had been growing were destroyed, trampled by soldiers during the night of violence. But Marcus was there anyway, kneeling in the dirt, carefully clearing debris from what remained of his little patch of earth. The medical staff says you have been avoiding them. Valith said, I am fine. You have 17 wounds that require treatment. I have had worse. He did not look up from his work. Much worse. Valith stood there, watching him, this strange creature she had married, this mystery wrapped in fragile human skin. I need answers. She finally said. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, brushed the dirt from his hands, and faced her in the daylight. She could see the damage more clearly than she had during the chaos of the attack. Cuts and burns and bruises covered his body, some of them deep enough that they should have left him unable to stand, let alone fight, and beneath the fresh wounds, she could see scars, dozens of them, hundreds of them, old scars layered over older scars. A map of violence written on his skin in a language she was only beginning to understand. Ask your questions, he said. Who are you? I am Marcus Chun, your husband. That is not what I mean, he sighed. A very human sound, and gestured toward a bench that had somehow survived the destruction. They sat together in the ruined garden, surrounded by broken stems and scattered petals. And Marcus began to talk. Earth has many organizations that do not appear in official records, he said. Agencies that train people for situations that governments do not want to acknowledge. Operations that require skills most humans never develop. You were a soldier. I was more than a soldier. He looked at his hands, the same hands that had planted seeds and ended lives with equal skill. They called us ghosts, because we did not officially exist, because we moved through conflicts without leaving traces, because we solved problems that could not be solved by normal means. Assassin. Sometimes he met her eyes without flinching, and sometimes protector. Spy, infiltrator, saboteur, whatever the situation required. I became what was needed. For how long? I was recruited when I was 12 years old. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was describing something that had happened to someone else. They saw something in me, some potential for violence that I did not know I possessed. And they spent the next 20 years turning that potential into reality. Valith tried to imagine Ida child, barely old enough to understand the world, being shaped into a weapon. Why did you stop? Because I killed everyone they asked me to kill. completed every mission they assigned me, and when it was done, I realized I had nothing left. He picked up a broken flower stem, turning it over in his fingers. I had spent my entire life learning how to destroy things, and I had never learned how to build anything. So you asked for this posting. I asked for peace. A small, sad smile crossed his face when they told me about the marriage alliance, about a princess who needed a suitable husband, about a posting where nothing would be expected of me except quiet existence. I thought it was my chance to become something other than what they had made me, and instead you ended up killing an army. Yes, the smile faded. It seems that no matter how far I run, the violence always finds me. Valeth thought about the courtiers who had mocked him, the generals who had dismissed him, all the powerful beings who had looked at this quiet human and seen nothing worth fearing. You let everyone underestimate you. It is the oldest human trick. Marcus set down the broken stem. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy, not the fastest or the most advanced, but we are very good at not looking dangerous until we need to be. Is that what you are now? Valeth asked. Dangerous? I have always been dangerous. He looked at her, and for the first time since she had known him, she saw something vulnerable beneath the calm. I was just hoping that here, with you, I would not have to be. She did not know what to say to that. She had married this man thinking he was weak, thinking he was harmless, thinking she had been given a burden instead of a partner. She had been wrong about everything. The enemy communications you mentioned, she said finally. How long have you been monitoring them? Since the second week after I arrived. That long? I could not help it. He shrugged. Another human gesture. I was trained to see threats everywhere, to gather information constantly, to prepare for attacks that might never come. It is not something I can turn off. So you knew about the coup for 8 months, and you said nothing. I did not have proof. His voice was patient. I had suspicions, intercepted fragments, pieces of a puzzle that did not come together until recently, and even then, I could not act without creating a diplomatic crisis. So you waited. I waited for them to make their move, knowing that when they did, I would be ready. He met her eyes. I was not going to let them hurt you. Valeth, not while I was still breathing. Why? The question came out before she could stop it. You barely know me. I have treated you like furniture for a year. Why would you risk your life to protect me? Marcus was quiet for a long time when he spoke. His voice was soft. Because you are my wife, he said simply. Because you took me into your home and gave me a garden and let me pretend, for a little while, that I was just a man who grew tomatoes. He reached out and touched her hand, his human warmth strange against her crystal skin. Because in all my years of violence, no one ever gave me anything worth protecting. And now someone has. Valeth felt something shift inside her. Some wall she had built beginning to crack. I do not know who you are, she whispered. Yes, you do. He squeezed her hand gently. I am the man who tends the garden, and I am the man who kills armies, and I am the man who would burn the galaxy to ashes to keep you safe. His eyes were steady. Certain, I am all of these things at once, and I am your husband. And I am tired of pretending to be less than I am. The court will want explanations. Let them want. Something dangerous flickered in his gentle eyes. I have spent a year being mocked and dismissed and treated like a pet. And I accepted it because it suited my purposes. But I'm done hiding. They can fear me or respect me or hate me, but they will not underestimate me again. Valeth looked at this man, this weapon-wearing human skin, this gardener with blood on his hands, and for the first time since their marriage, she felt something other than disappointment. She felt hope. The human consort of Princess Valeth had single-handedly destroyed an armed coup. Security footage leaked, despite the Crown's best efforts to contain it. And soon every species with access to interstellar communications had seen what Marcus Chen could do. The reactions were immediate and varied. Some species laughed, convinced the footage must be fake, unable to believe that a single soft-bodied human could defeat hundreds of armored Etherean warriors. Others grew quiet, remembering old rumors about human soldiers, stories they had dismissed as propaganda, tales of persistence and violence that suddenly seemed less like fiction. And some began to plan the first assassination attempt. Came 2 weeks after the coup, a Von Kell loyalist managed to infiltrate the palace kitchens and poison the food supplies with a compound that was deadly to humans but harmless to Ethereans. Marcus survived. How? The palace physician demanded after running every test available. That poison should have killed you within minutes. I built immunity to 17 lethal compounds before I left Earth. Marcus explained calmly. That particular one was number 6 on my list. The second attempt came a month later. A sniper from the Kethrani mercenary guild set up position in a tower overlooking the palace gardens, waiting for the human to appear in his little plot of Earth. The sniper died before he could take the shot. Marcus found him during one of his regular sweeps of potential sight lines. Something he did every morning before breakfast. You check for snipers every day? Valith asked when she learned what had happened. Every day. Marcus confirmed. It takes about an hour, but it is worth the peace of mind. An hour? The palace has many good angles for long-range attacks, he shrugged. I have identified 417 of them, and I have made modifications to reduce the viability of 392. Valith stared at him. When did you do this? Over the past year, during my morning walks. That gentle smile again. You thought I was just enjoying the scenery. The third attempt was more ambitious. House Korath, longtime rivals of the Sornkai dynasty, hired a team of 12 combat specialists from the Vraxian warrior caste. Beings whose species had conquered dozens of worlds and who had never been defeated in single combat. They came in the night, professional and prepared, armed with weapons specifically designed to overcome human biology. 3 of them made it inside the palace before Marcus became aware of them. None of them made it out. The cleaning staff refused to enter that wing of the palace. For a week afterward, what did he do to them? Valith asked the guard captain who had witnessed the aftermath. The captain, a veteran of a dozen wars, could not meet her eyes. I have seen many battles, Your Highness. His voice was hollow. I have never seen anything like that. Word spread, the assassination. Attempts decreased, but new problems emerged. Ambassadors from across the galaxy began requesting meetings with the human weapon, as the diplomatic channels had started calling him. Some came out of fear, wanting to assess the threat for themselves. Some came out of curiosity, eager to study a specimen of the species that had produced such a creature, and some came out of anger, demanding to know why humanity had hidden its true capabilities from the galactic community. Marcus handled all of them with the same quiet patience he applied to his garden. You deceived U.S., the Vraxian ambassador, accused during one such meeting. Your species presented itself as weak and harmless, and all along you were breeding killers. We did not breed anything, Marcus replied calmly. We simply survived. One of your kind killed 12 of our finest warriors. 14. Actually, Marcus smiled. You missed 2 who tried to escape. The ambassador's face twisted with rage. You think this is amusing? I think you came to my wife's home with soldiers intended to kill me, and now you are angry that I defended myself. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Ambassador, what exactly did you expect to happen? The Vraxian delegation left the same day. They did not return. The most significant meeting came 6 months after the coup. The Cathari Empire, the most feared military power in the known galaxy, sent their High Admiral to Etheria. Prime Admiral Kethzer was massive, even by his species standards. A mountain of chitin and blade arms and compound eyes that had watched. Worlds burn. He requested a private meeting with Marcus Valith, refused. You are not going alone into a room with something that can tear you apart in seconds. I have dealt with worse. I do not care. Her crystalline form flickered with protective energy. You are my husband, and I will not lose you to some alien monster's pride. Marcus looked at her, surprise evident on his face. You care whether I live or die. Of course I care. She grabbed his arm, her crystal fingers warm against his human skin. I have watched you protect me, watched you suffer for me, watched you bleed for this world that is not even yours. Her voice cracked. How could I not care? He was quiet for a moment. Then he touched her face gently. I will be careful. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her forehead. A human gesture that she was beginning to love. But I have to do this alone. Valith, the Admiral, will not respect any show of protection. I need to face him as an equal, against every instinct. She let him go. The meeting lasted 3 hours when Marcus emerged. He was carrying a treaty document that the Etherean Dominion had been seeking for centuries. A mutual defense pact that would guarantee protection against any external threat. How? Valith demanded. I explained what would happen if they threatened you. Marcus handed her the treaty, in detail. And they believed you? They believed me. That dangerous smile again. It helps that I was very specific about the methods I would use. What methods? Methods I learned in places that do not officially exist. Targeting vulnerabilities that the Ketheri do not know they have. He shrugged. They are a proud species. But they are not stupid. They recognized a threat when they saw one. Valith looked at the treaty in her hands, at the signatures and seals that represented the most significant diplomatic achievement in Etherean history. All because of one human, all because of her husband. Galaxy is afraid of you, she said quietly. Good. Marcus looked out the window at the garden he was rebuilding. The earth plants slowly taking root in alien soil. Fear keeps people honest. Is that what you want to be for the rest of your life? Something to be feared? No. His voice was soft. I want to be a gardener. I want to grow tomatoes and make tea, and sit with my wife in the evening and watch the twin moons rise. He turned to face her. But I will be whatever is necessary to protect what I love. And what do you love? He reached out and took her hand. I think you know the answer to that. The palace had been rebuilt, the scars of the coup erased by craftsmen who worked with crystal and light to restore what violence had broken. But some things could not be restored to what they were before some things had become. Something new. Valith found her husband in the garden. As she always did in the evenings, the tomato plants had grown strong and tall, their red fruits catching the light of the setting suns. And Marcus moved among them with the gentle care of someone who understood that life was precious because it was so easily lost. He had changed in the past year, not in ways that others would notice, but in ways that Valith had learned to see. Constant tension in his shoulders had eased slightly. The shadows in his eyes had grown less dark. The smile that had once been a mask was becoming something real. The kitchen says you have been giving them too many tomatoes, she said. There is no such thing as too many tomatoes. They've started making sauce just to use them all. Good. He picked another ripe fruit and handed it to her. Try one. Valith held the strange earth vegetable in her crystalline hand, studying its simple red curves, its unremarkable appearance that hid sweetness inside. Like her husband, she bit into it, and the juice ran down her chin. And Marcus laughed at the surprised expression on her face. Messy, isn't it? Why do humans eat things that fight back? Because we are stubborn. He wiped her chin with his sleeve. a gesture so casual and intimate that it made her heart flutter in ways she had not known were possible. We found a plant that was technically poisonous and decided it would make a nice snack. That seems unwise. Most human things are. He took her hand and led her to the bench where they had sat on that terrible morning after the coup. We are not a wise species. Valeth, we are just persistent. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the twin moons rise over the crystal spires of the palace. Courtiers had stopped mocking Marcus. They watched him now with respect, with fear, with something like awe. The man who had been invisible had become impossible to ignore, but here in the garden, away from the politics and the power games, he was just a man sitting with his wife. I have been thinking, Villa said finally. About what? About us. She turned to face him. About what we are to each other. Marcus waited, patient as always. When we married, I thought I had been given a burden. She reached out and touched his face, tracing the scars that lined his jaw. I thought you were weak, and simple, and beneath me. And now? Now I understand that strength does not always roar. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his, a gesture of intimacy that Ethereans reserve for their closest bonds. Sometimes strength is quiet. Sometimes it tends gardens and makes tea and waits in the shadows to protect what it loves. Valeth, let me finish. She pulled back slightly so she could see his eyes. I loved the idea of you before. The political alliance, the symbolic union, but I did not love you. She smiled, and her crystalline features caught the moonlight. Now I do? Marcus was quiet for a long moment when he spoke. His voice was rough with emotion he rarely showed. I have spent my entire life being used as a weapon. He said, they trained me to kill. And I killed. They pointed me at enemies, and I destroyed them. They asked me to become something terrible, and I became it. And now? Now I am sitting in a garden with a woman who sees me. Actually sees me, not the mask, not the weapon, not the monster. Tears gathered in his eyes. Human tears that sparkled like stars. I do not know how to be loved, Valeth. I was never taught that. Then I will teach you. She took both his hands in hers. The same way you taught me about tomatoes. He laughed. A broken, beautiful sound. It may be messier than tomatoes. I am willing to get messy. They sat in the garden as the moons rose higher. Not speaking, not needing to speak. Simply existing together in a moment of peace that neither of them had ever expected to invade. Much later, they walked back toward the palace, but before they entered, Marcus stopped. I need to tell you something. What? The Human Confederation has requested that I return to active service. His voice was carefully neutral. They say I'm wasted here, that my skills could be used to protect human interests across the galaxy. Valeth felt ice form in her chest. And what did you tell them? I told them that my place is with my wife. He met her eyes, and there was no hesitation in his gaze. I told them that I spent 40 years being what they wanted me to be. And now I am going to be what I want to be. And what is that? A gardener. That smile again. But different now. Warmer. More real. A husband. Maybe someday a father if you would want that. Just a man living a quiet life with the woman he loves. They will not be happy. They will survive. He shrugged. And if they try to force the issue, they will discover that I am much more dangerous when protecting my family than I ever was following orders. Valeth looked at this man, this human who had turned everything she believed upside down. You know the threats will never stop, she said quietly. The enemies we made during the coup, the powers who fear what you represent, they will keep coming. Let them come. Marcus took her hand and started walking toward the palace. I have tomatoes to grow and a wife to love and a garden that needs tending. He glanced back at her with a smile that was equal parts gentle and deadly. Anyone who wants to interrupt that can find out why humanity is called a persistence predator. What does that mean exactly? You have mentioned it before. It means that on Earth, we evolved to hunt by following prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. He squeezed her hand. We are not the strongest or the fastest. But we do not stop. We do not give up. We do not accept defeat. That sounds terrifying. It is. His smile widened. For our enemies. They entered the palace together, the crystal halls reflecting their images back at them. The alien princess and her human husband, two beings who should never have found each other, but who had become something neither could be alone behind them. In the garden Marcus had built, the tomato plants swayed in the evening breeze. And somewhere in the palace, a cook was making sauce. And somewhere in the galaxy, enemies plotted and planned and prepared. But here, in this moment, there was only peace. Marcus. Lilith said as they walked toward their chambers, "Thank you for protecting me. Always." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, until the stars go dark and the universe grows cold. "I will protect you." That is a very human thing to say. We are a dramatic species. He grinned. Also very good at making promises and keeping them. She laughed. And the sound echoed through the crystal halls. Like music, they had started as strangers bound by duty. They had become something more, and in the garden of the crystal spire, watched over by twin moons and tended by hands that could both nurture and destroy. The seeds of their future continued to grow. This is what humanity brings to the stars. Valeth thought as she walked beside her husband, not just violence, not just persistence, but love. Fierce and stubborn and absolutely refusing to die. The galaxy would learn one garden at a time,